Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, and welcome to Through a Scottish Prism. This is actually a bit of an ad hoc. We're meant to still be in our summer holidays or summer research, but there's been a couple of things happening and we get talking and we thought, why don't we record it instead of just talking and letting all that hot air get out there and not record it. So here we are. So we have, of course, Phil. I mean, the new thing, of course, is we've got the King of England. Invited Andy Burnham, recently elected member for somewhere, and with 25,000 votes or something, to become the new Prime Minister of England, the bleak UK, the Union. Yes, you realise this is our 7th Prime Minister in 10 years, Phil. Larry the cat's getting fed up. Oh no, we've seemed to be frozen. I'll leave that to you then, Eva, to see if we get Phil back in the room.
Thanks, Roddy. Yeah, to put this in context, we're back here early because of some, in inverted commas, seismic developments in the politics of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And the context is that, as you said, less than 25,000, in fact, 24,927 people elected Andy Burnham in the by-election for Makerfield, which came about simply and solely because those in the Labour Party decided that Keir Starmer wasn't cutting the mustard as if he ever was going to. And the context of this is less than 25,000 people have decided the constitutional arrangements, the governance of the United Kingdom for the next couple of years. Bear in mind, the population of the UK is almost 70 million. And where I live in Clackmannanshire, the population is of the order of 52,000. So less than half of the population of the wee county of Scotland have determined the identity of the new Prime Minister. If that is not less than democratic, what is? And it's been an absolute eye-opener for those who thought that we live in a democracy, and it's a reminder of Alex Salmond's words about the core arguments for independence. Why is it that we are in Liberate Scotland? Why did we found the Alliance to Liberate Scotland? It was because we understood that decisions about Scotland should be made in Scotland and not by Westminster. But this has proven just how bad it is, that less than 25,000 people in a part of the north of England decide how the rest of the United Kingdom functions. And that is one very, very good reason to promote nothing other than independence, nothing less, because Andy Burnham has started, as he intends to continue, with his new office, number 10 North. And in his eyes, North doesn't even mean the offensive term that Gordon Brown used, meaning Scotland as North Britain. It means the north of England. But number 10 North, the razzmatazz of the offices there, the expense there, the showmanship, the appeal to the media, the disc jockeying, he's dancing, he's sitting in the pub knowing how much it costs for a packet of, was it salt and vinegar Monster Munch, when what he's done so far is indicate that from, I think, October or so, his first big move is to reduce VAT on electricity from 5% to 0, thereby saving every household in the UK £45 per annum. That's 83 pence a week, and that's your lot. You can get 2.5 Fredos for that. You might get a couple of bananas for that. And that's only until the electricity prices are hiked later on in the year, when that reduction or that saving will be lost. But that's the big headline. Look what Andy's done. Now, I'm sure we'll get onto his cabinet, the calibre of those people who are there, those who are returning from previously being banished in the wilderness, refusing to hand back severance pay that they were paid, and all sorts of things that just show how rotten to the core the establishment at Westminster are, and underscore We need to do things in Scotland, for Scotland, by Scotland, and take the opportunity of uniting our movement to show that Scotland can govern itself far more competently, realistically, and in a fashion in which the politicians are in touch with the needs of the people, not entirely out of touch with their razzmatazz, their singing, their dancing, and their tours round their expensive new offices.
Yeah, 7 prime ministers are the same 10 years, Phil, and every one of them, from David Cameron onwards, has all said, "You're not getting another referendum. Back in your boxes, Jock. Not happening. Not happening." They're so democratic they won't allow it. And this new guy, no different, no different at all. Off limits, he said. Off limits to says no to indie ref. No, he doesn't want to talk to the Scottish press. I didn't even know we had a Scottish press. It's all foreknown to me, but that's what's happening. No independence reference, but where he does pay attention to Scotland, for sure is where he is really concerned. Is this, Phil? He's certainly going to drill, baby, drill. Now we know that in 2014 he was on the phone in Glasgow telling pensioners they'd lose their pension, that all the jobs would go, would be out to eat, all that stuff. And now he's coming to steal our oil at the last 7 prime ministers and every prime minister before them. The hypocrisy and lack of democracy is disgusting.
Absolutely. And then when you say there is bang on the money, 7 PMs in 10 years, managing the gradual decline of what was the core of the British Empire, Great Britain, no more. You need to change the name, get rid of the great, that's for sure. If this was a football club, it would be determined as being in a meltdown. All these managers coming and go. And yes, we've been told, John Swinney, Nicola Sturgeon, just ignored the facts. We've been told time and time again by pretty much everyone who's got anywhere near or a sniff at 10 Downing Street, that chair, there will be no referendum. Not on my watch. It consistently said, so what's the cunning plan? Well, there isn't one, because there was no intention to do so that from the SNP since Nicola took over, and John's in the same cabal, so it's the same story. The fact that it's a coronation, the fact that he was appointed rather than elected, is also part of this modern sham of politics, the illusion that these politicians somehow serve us, this game that you and Eva mentioned. Oh, he knows the packet of price of crisps. It's the classic deflection. They're going to increase your real terms tax, decrease your what you get and what services you get. Your NHS will be melted down and sold off. Education continues to decline. And instead, what do you get? Penny off a pint, cheap pigeon food and whippet food to keep the punters happy, especially the northern blokes. Was it flat caps? Discount on flat caps? Oh, piss off! This is the kind of state that Britain is in. And will it be any of a change from Starmer? Well, no, because Starmer had a Friends of Israel handler. Okay, in Burnham, was a former Friends of Israel member, and he's got his new minister, former minister James Burnell, who was once chair of Labour Friends of Israel group, and he was the chief executive of a major lobbying firm to be his chief of staff. We touched on that before. So, he's now the new prime minister, and his team will work with. He said he'll work with different sides of Labour. What different sides of Labour? Unless you've got Jeremy Corbyn, you're only working for New Labour. And why? Because he's a Blairist. I mean, his current allies include Josh Simmons, okay, former director of the think tank Labour Together. Right? Labour Together. What John Swinney, what do you think he was going to say about the referendum, you clown? So Labour Together is widely credited with propelling Starmer to power, but also MP Louise Hay, reportedly a victim of the Labour Together machine. So there's contradictions there, but the Chief of Staff is a crucial role, and it would make Burnham's right-hand man for a right-wing Labour government. And, there's absolutely no doubt about it that because Burnham was a minister under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown in the early 2000s, and he shared an office with Burnham, who was a fellow minister in the Blair years. So this is same old, same old. This is individuals cut from the same cloth, and it's expensive cloth because, of course, Burnham's a multimillionaire. So forget your whippet food crap and your cheap pint. I know how much a packet of crisps is, and I know and what a pint is. I'm a working class man. No, you're not. You're a multimillionaire, and because of the system we have in the UK, it's very simple. He will do as he's told, and he'll service those who really control Britain, and which is the corporations, and the MPs are there to pretend or to create the illusion that you have power, you have a vote, that it counts. They will do exactly they're told because they are just the highest level of servant of the people that really run the country. Speaking of which, drill baby drill. I mean, he's been. There's a lot of questions. There was a lot of questions just before he came into Downing Street that he's going to announce for new plans for new drilling in the North Sea, which he did 6 days ago. Haven't any of the detail on it because there's not a lot of detail there yet. But he'd stick to the parties. He was originally going to stick to the 24 manifesto pledge to issue no oil and gas licenses, but would honour existing ones. Now, we'll have to see what happens because on Sunday we were speaking with Kunsberg, and Labour Deputy Leader Lucy Powell said Burnham would stick to the party's manifesto comments, but there would be a change of emphasis in North Sea oil and gas. What does that mean? Change of emphasis? Are you drilling? Are you not drilling? Are there new licenses or not? We'll have to see what comes out, but really what we want in Scotland, if you care about the people of Scotland, is to keep that oil and gas in the ground for the moment, because that's the oil and gas that funded Thatcher. That's the oil and gas that built Canary Wharf. That's the oil and gas that didn't come to Scotland. Aberdeen got the crumbs from the table and there was a prosperous place to stay for a bit. But go to Aberdeen now, it's tired, dead in its feet like the rest of Scotland. So for me, I hope the pressure from the tree hugging, lentil munching sandal wearers is enough to keep that in the ground, and then when the sensible people who, like us, who have a more modern take on capitalism, allied with a social conscience and socialism, we can build a country that actually looks after, put your own house in order first, and that's what Scotland needs to do. This guy, he doesn't give a shit.
You're on mute, Roddy.
I've just set myself a quid. I said 7 prime ministers in 10 years. But if we go back even to Thatcher and straight through Thatcher, Blair, Brown, Cameron, and through Theresa May, Boris Johnson, they're all got one thing in common. They're all neoliberals. They all bow down to the City of London and the money men. That's what they've done, and that's what the drill baby drill is all about. But to show, you can take all your oil, but you're getting no democracy. You're not getting a referendum. You're not going to talk. Whatever you vote for, it doesn't matter because we're here to steal. But here's the other one. He's going to give us mayors. He doesn't even, the man with his finger in the pulse, the man that knows the price of a packet of salt and vinegar crisps, doesn't know that we have Lord Provosts and we don't have a single mayor in Scotland. He's going to give us them anyway. What a load of keech, Eva.
It's imperialism writ large, isn't it? It's imposing on Scotland values that are traditionally and historically English. But he's doing it in such a way that he's pretending that this comprises devolution. But it's devolution from Westminster beyond the reaches of Holyrood. And the suggestion is that it makes power and accountability more local so that people will think, oh, aye, that's democracy in action. But what it is, as was famously said, 30 odd years ago now, power devolved is power retained. The mayors will be the puppets on the end of his strings. And that's what that plan is, should it ever come to pass. And that should be an enormous wake-up call to those in the independence movement who genuinely desire independence. I think the actual words used by Andy Burnham relative to the question of a second referendum was that he declared it off limits, not to be discussed, not on the agenda, because his focus was entirely on economic growth and cost of living relief. So as we've already covered, the cost of living relief is £45 per annum mean time. That's what he's delivering. And I think that it ill behoves anybody in the Scottish independence movement to criticise those of us who talk day in and day out about unity and unification. Because we said in terms of the Starmer government that Westminster was at its weakest. Now is the time for the independence supporters to strike with a united plan. Andy Burnham is not in a strong position because he's been manipulated from the back. But you only have to look at the arrangements that are already being rolled out for his number 10 in the North Office to see that these arrangements did not happen overnight. They were in the planning for a long, long time. The office is opened, the civil servants have been offered relocation, so this much vaunted bringing the government to the north comprises offering at least 300 civil servants who are based in Whitehall a relocation package to come to Manchester. They're not creating jobs in, for and around Manchester, they're relocating from London and paying a hell of an amount of money for it into the bargain.
Yeah.
Burnham travelled to Manchester for his North number 10 office opening by way of the jet, and it cost of the order of £30,000 for one flight to take him from Glasgow to Manchester. Clearly he couldn't get the train. But if he takes that plane once a week for the duration of this parliamentary term, that will cost the UK several millions of pounds for what is in essence a vanity project. I and every other court practitioner in Scotland regularly conducts court hearings in children's panels by WebEx video or Teams video or Zoom calls. Was it beyond the stretch of the imagination for the same to be done here? Why did the whole cabinet have to make their way to Manchester? What was that other than a photo call? Mm-hmm. This is a waste of money. It's a sham in terms of democratic arrangements and purposes. And what it tells you about the imposition of mayors is that Andy Burnham and those, as I said earlier, working him from behind the back, know that were Scotland to have a democratic vote about the prospect of independence, then the outcome is likely to be a majority in favour of independence. So what he's trying to do with the mayors is to make sure that the insidious reach of Westminster, the dishonest, undemocratic processes of Westminster get their fingers into every pie in Scotland, particularly in the areas where a yes vote, if we put it like that, would likely be the strongest. So he'll propose a mayor for Glasgow. He'll propose a mayor for Dundee, the yes city. He'll do the same for Edinburgh. And he's doing that to preserve the union. He's not doing it to look after the people who need to be looked after and cared for and catered for. And he's certainly not doing it for the homeless in Scotland, for those who need better services in Scotland that they're not getting because the Scottish budget is restricted. You could go on forever. But this is Andy Burnham, an Englishman, telling the Scots how they're going to be governed. And it's time the Scots decided how the Scots are going to be governed and tell England, Westminster, that we're taking no more.
Absolutely. I mean, we had it, if you remember during the, I'm sure you do, Phil, during the referendum, David Cameron, lead us, don't leave us. You'll be at the centre of our politics. They've all said that, and well, lo and behold, there you go. Andy Burnham told the voters on the latest promises to Scotland will be the heart of everything of my government. It's a load of bull. We're a resourceful, nothing more.
Exactly, and being a very rich resource at that, because quite frankly, we are the richest part of the UK by a distance, and we keep going back to the classic. We're 8.3 to 8.5% of the population, with 1/3 of the landmass, 2/3 of the sea area of the UKCS, approaching like 97.5% of the oil in the UKCS, over approaching 60% of the gas, and all the new finds are going to be west of Shetland, further out past the big projects added at Clear Ridge in the Schiehallion FPSO, which was switched out for the Glen Lyon. There's billions out there, billions of it. Off the Clyde, and particularly out in the Rockall Basin, and that's just, and then there's all the minerals. So we are the cash cow, and then there's 90% of Britain's water is in Scotland. You know, Loch Ness has got more fresh water in it than the whole of England and Wales put together. So we are by a distance the richest part. We have the greatest resources. We've also got whiskey, the biggest export drink. The Scottish salmon is the biggest export food from the UK, and again from 8.3% population. We now do well. We do 80% of Britain's gin is now made in Scotland because of because you need at least 3 years before you can call it whiskey. So, and 10 years before you can sell it for a big profit, or it's a blend. So yeah, the setup is such that we are the cash cow, and they will never let us. Is a con. I mean, he said he'll decentralise power in Scotland as part of a strategy to power up all parts of the UK. Heard it all before. The fact is that Scotland is probably the most devolved part of the UK as it currently stands, and that would be all of the levers, economic, fiscal and monetary levers that you could manage an economy. But that can only come through independence. Devolution, as we say, is devolved. You retain the power when you do that. It's dead simple. So he's obviously now he thinks he wants to make as he quoted before, just before he came into office, this will be the biggest change in our lifetime to the way this country is run. Why? Because he did a good go at mayors. He's going to try and introduce mayors to Scotland and decentralise. The principle's correct, but devolution doesn't work. Think about it, folks. This is the illusion of control, as the devolved power is primarily administrative. Okay, the funding still is determined in London, and that decreases in real terms year after year. And what does that mean? Well, think about it. If your pay goes up by 1.5% or nothing at all, as is often the case, yet the cost of living is rising by 5%, then how far will your pay go every month? Well, less and less is the answer to that. That's why people are going on less holidays, not going out as much, not partying as much. And God, you need it in these times. It's depressing because the MP's wages continue to rise well above inflation, so they're doing all right. It's a con, and this guy's not to be trusted. More of the same, I'm afraid. Here it comes, another bout of austerity.
We have to get out, Eva, without a doubt. I would operate a system of non-cooperation. One of the things India did, Gandhi did, he didn't believe in violence, nor do I, nor do any of us in this program, this podcast. And he just said we should make ourselves so difficult for the British to rule that they give up. And that's exactly what happened. They made it difficult. But Swinney, two things. First, he said, he was ready. John Swinney looks forward to the constructive talks with Andy Burnham. And the first thing Burnham said was, off limits for independence, back in your box, we're giving you mayors, blah, sit down, shut up. But I want to, go on a wee bit further even before you answer that, because here's a wee video. I won't play all of it. It's too long, this video. But this is Swinney when being questioned about the new English Prime Minister. And I stress, ladies and gentlemen, that wasn't a slip of the tongue. He is the English Prime Minister. He's English. He governs for England. He overlooks in Scotland. He rules us. He looks upon us as a colony. And this is what the colonial governor up there
I congratulate Andy Burnham on his appointment as Prime Minister, and I look forward to a constructive working relationship with him. He's highlighted the fact that Westminster has failed and has failed Scotland, and I agree with that analysis. And the questions that arise are, well, what do we do about that, and how do we secure the powers that will achieve the objectives that I'm interested in doing, of improving the lives of people in Scotland and making sure that they've got a control over their own future.
What do you see yourself working with him on? Can you already see possible areas of consensus?
There will be policy areas where we are obviously in close agreement and alignment. Some of his policy priorities, for example, on water nationalisation or rail nationalisation, are are not issues that we've got to confront here in Scotland because we already have water and rail in public ownership. But there'll be other areas in relation to the cost of living where I set out policy priorities during the election, which we're working to deliver around a £2 bus fare cap for the whole of Scotland, which I think might feature in some of the thinking that Andy Burnham brings forward. But as yet, he's not been specific about his policy agenda, but what I signal today is a willingness to work with him to find areas of common ground that will improve the lives of people in Scotland.
Obviously, there's been a big talk about devolution and Andy Burnham looking at devolving more away from Westminster. Do you think there is more he could give to Holyrood?
I think there are many areas in where the devolution of further powers to the Scottish Parliament would help us in supporting the wider agenda which the Prime Minister is committed to about delivering growth in every part of the United Kingdom. So my government is intensely focused on delivering higher levels of economic growth, and I want to make sure that we have the powers to enable us to do that. Now, one very concrete example of that could be the devolution of powers over a Scottish visa, which would make practical sense to enable people to come and to live in Scotland and to contribute to our working age population and to the growth of our economy. Now, that's a proposal that we put to the previous UK government and it was ruled out. Well, it's a proposal supported by every university in the country, all our colleges, it's supported by the business community. So it's a really good example of how more powers to the Scottish Parliament would allow us to enhance our economy. So I look forward.
Spoken like a great devolutionist, Eva. Does he sound like an independence warrior to you?
Need to buy a box of Germaline and a packet of plasters for his knees, quite frankly. This is just embarrassing beyond belief. I mean, you saw me chewing my knuckles there and Phil's head was in his hands. He spoke there about the people of Scotland having the opportunity to control their future, or words to that effect. We're back to the secret plan again, but in the real world, John's managing devolution. I don't know his motivation. I don't really know the guy at all beyond what we all see on the telly or whatever. But this is just depressing. You know, if Westminster had the interests of Scotland at heart, Grangemouth refinery would have stayed open.
Yes.
But you look at the oil and gas programme that we've now got Burnham talking about, and you understand why it was that for Westminster's purposes and for the purposes of the maintenance of the Union, Grangemouth had to go at the same time as English refineries were expanding. Yep. It's just part of the bigger plan. It's continuation of the bankrolling of Thatcher and everything that came along with that. And for the life of me, I just don't understand what it is that the people of Scotland think they see in John Swinney as somebody who's going to drive Scotland's interests forward. He guaranteed prior to the election earlier this year that with an SNP majority there would be a referendum. But he also hobbled himself further by maintaining that Westminster could not reject another Section 30 when so many of us were screaming that they could and they would, because they had over and over and over again. Now, Andy Burnham, when he met John Swinney, made it clear we are not discussing a Section 30. It's not on the table. It's off the cards. We're not here for that. No. So that is disrespecting the mandate of the Scottish Parliament and the vote in the Scottish Parliament that would be considered. But there's a tricky bit in there for John Swinney and for those of us in the wider movement, which is that although there's a majority of allegedly independent supporting MSPs in the Parliament, it wasn't a majority of the popular vote. And that's because of the disconnect between support for the SNP oblique Greens and support for independents generally. And that gap of the order of 20% will continue to increase if the people who want independence see no action and no results from John Swinney's government. So it's in terms of making something, saying something constructive and wanting to see Scotland having a united movement and the ability to actually get a vote for independence. What I'm hoping for is that the rebels in the SNP who unsuccessfully moved their motion about unity at last year's conference will be able to do something similar at this year's conference, but will also feel that they can join with others who are screaming for and working towards unity, whether it's us or Yes United and the others that are in similar organisations, because it's abundantly clear Andy Burnham can bat away John Swinney's pleas like you would bat away a midgie if you were outside in the garden in the summer. It's beyond belief that we are where we are. We've had the election of 2021, we've had the election of 2026, and we've now got the SNP saying it's no fair when they refused a referendum after guaranteeing it. So it's over to them to say what it is they're going to do to bring it about, because in its absence, Scotland's oil and gas will continue to be bled dry. There will be promises to children that they can get a school bag when they start school. There'll be promises that they can go to a soccer academy. There might be some promises relative to new swimming pools or tennis courts, when we should be offering the people of Scotland the opportunity to write their own future destiny and to create that in Scotland, as opposed to begging for crumbs from that Westminster table, which is furnished with delights paid for by Scotland.
Yeah, while you're there, Eva, one of the things in that interview with John Swinney, he was talking about, well, all these, we went to, all the academics, all the universities, everyone says the visa, and there's something we could do. Here's my forecast. They'll tell him to piss off as well. He'll not get the visa, will he?
Not only will he not get that, we'll all continue to use British passports and we'll get held up in queues when we're trying to travel freely abroad. And another thing, actually, you've just jogged my memory, Roddy, in terms of Scotland being able to travel or trade with the rest of the world, we've talked for long and weary. Doug Chapman in particular did a lot of work about trying to reinstate the ferries between Scotland and Europe. And what did we see last week, the week before? There's talk about ferries being reinstated between the north of England and Scandinavia. Why can't you go from Scotland to Scandinavia? Well, you can, damn fine. Why no? Because it would open Scotland, a gateway to the rest of the world. And that's what the Scots are denied by Westminster. But it's what the Scots could do for themselves if enough of us were prepared to join hands together, stand up and be counted, and put up a fight to Westminster and say, we're voting in that Scottish parliamentary election that John can call next week and make that a de facto referendum using Angus Brendan McNeill's strategy.
Yeah, and also, where is they promised us a constitutional convention, which you and I and others in this podcast have been shouting about for years. It's still not here. That's what we need to get a united front and a united policy. On that same question, Phil, about does he sound like an indie warrior to you? But I just want to make this, everyone knows my football allegiances. This year's champions is my team, the old Glasgow Rangers. And there's one thing, when I used to go to the games, I look back in horror now when I was a younger man, certain songs I sang, I wish I hadn't. But when I never sung, when I would never sing, this is the opening of the Commonwealth Games. And if you don't see, it's not a great video here, ladies and gentlemen, but the bald chap is your First Minister, the independence warrior, the independence man, the man who knows that the Scottish people are sovereign and that this is the King of England. No self-respecting independent supporter, Phil, would belt that song out. He could have just stood there, lips shut, said nothing. It just shows he's a devolutionist. He's not an independentista.
Yeah, and 'twas ever thus. That is the nature of their being. I put myself as a politician first, they would say, and you've got to be in it to win it. But they're not doing anything to further the cause of independence, and that is, I mean, I've been put in difficult positions by friends. I've got a dear friend who's full Colonel British Army, and I've done a few presentations and management speeches with him on various events with the Officer Training Corps. And at one of these events, it also some of these kind of city guild events. I was there, and they play God Save the Queen at the time. I tend to go wearing full Highland dress, the full wrap round kilt, right? I can't. They stopped short of the big rubber sword I was trying to get a hoodie, but anyway, I refused to stand for it the first time, and I wasn't invited back to that event. The second time, I thought, I'm not singing it. I'll stand up out of respect for the people around me, because Hugo was saying, come on, man, at least do something. At least don't disrespect. I went, okay, I won't disrespect, but I will not sing it either, because he's not my king. And I don't need to pass water over a glass of whiskey to the king over the water, because I don't believe in all that crap. You know, I want independence for Scotland, the sovereign people of Scotland. Exactly, and that's it was never that important. It was never high on my list. It's never been higher on my list than getting kids out of poverty and putting your own house in order, looking after your own towns. I keep going back to Coatbridge. Why? Because of the people. It's not the state of the place. It's getting worse and worse. The services are getting worse and worse. The state of affairs. Yet these people who put their politics first, you, John Swinney, Nicola Sturgeon, you're looking after number one. All that money that was stolen, all that money that you took, all that spend, all that fancy gear, all the expensive hair dryers and clothes and designer stuff, while people are going hungry. On your watch, Nicola Sturgeon, with your wee cabal, since Alex handed you the golden keys to an independent Scotland, and you promptly sold them. And I know we're probably going to talk about David Davis, who I was delighted to see get up there and spoke the truth, because Nicola and the establishment are lying to the people of Scotland. So is John Swinney. What happened to Alex Salmond is nothing short of a disgrace, and these people ought to be brought to account. And John Swinney, that is a perfect indicator of this. It's not even gradualist. I was persuaded by Alex to go towards independence from a gradualist perspective, because he was a genius, the greatest politician we've had in a very, very long time. But now these people are gradually heading back towards the union. They're not heading towards independence. At least Alex was facing the right direction. These people are not. They've not done anything to further the cause. Things are getting worse, folks. Look at it, as my dad said when I went into politics. Geez, I didn't know anything about it. It's dead simple. Look out your window. What's the education like? What's your healthcare like? What are the prospects for your kids? What nick are the roads in? What kind of services have you got to rely upon? What's the standard of living like? These are the metrics by which we ought to measure politicians, not the bullshit that they come out with and the crap. And it's like, as soon as they say, let me be clear, let me be clear, let me be crystal clear, you know they're just about to come out with a line that they've been told to say. Because when you go into politics, one of the first things you're told is like, no matter what happens, here's the 3 answers you've got to give today. So no matter what you've asked, that's why they never answer straight questions. They'll always wind it round to give you the information of the agenda that they're currently is pushing, that some think tank has come up with, and they're telling you lies. So John Swinney, you're full of shit. You're not doing anything to the benefit of the people of Scotland, and all these old friends of mine that who are nice enough people, but when you consider that they are betraying the people of Scotland, putting their own careers first, then I have no respect anymore. And it's tough because some really nice people, but you need to wake up to what you're doing. You are responsible for the state of the people of Scotland, of the lives that are lost, the drug abuse, the poverty, the desperation, almost 1 in 4 in poverty, it's around 1 in 4 that are currently out of our children under 20 and 25, I think it was, see no positive future for them in this country. That is an absolute disgrace, and all you politicians are responsible for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've said all along I was quite happy when they weren't drilling for oil, because it meant it was all the more for us when independence came. So now I think it's even more urgent. If they're going to drill, baby drill. Swinney and the SNP need to get their body in gear. They need to give us this constitutional convention. They need to come up with a plan or unify the movement. And we can, as we've talked about often, we need to just close the Parliament and have a referendum, a de facto referendum. To go full circle back to where we began, Eva, we talked about democracy and the lack of democracy. And one of the things, the disgusting things about the UK is we've got a second chamber of Tories in the House of Lords, 833 at last count. And fortunately, our leader of the Labour Party in Scotland, Sarwar, told us 4 years ago he was opposed, he was appalled, and that the Labour would scrap the House of Lords, said this party leader. And he told us in great detail how much he loathed it, how wrong it was. And here we have Andy Burnham. Here's the question done this. The House of Lords in its current form as an institution is not placed in 21st policies and has been for far too long. And as Sarwar said, absolutely. Who's the new Lord, Eva? He took a peerage. Typical, Lord Haw-Haw, as I call him. Lord Haw-Haw is going to be he's going to be a governor. He couldn't do it by the ballot box, so they're giving him it by the back door. He'll be governing over parts of Scotland.
It's absolutely shocking and so surprising. Not. You only have to look at Anna Sarwar's record of failure in the Scottish Parliament. I mean, I'm really struggling to find any single individual achievement that he did for Scotland anywhere other than work for constituents, which we all know would be done on his behalf by his office staff. He didn't have much of a record when he was a member at Westminster either, when in essence he almost inherited his dad's seat. And obviously we know that I don't think his dad was a member of the House of Lords at any time, but he was nominated for the House of Lords and the appointment appears to have been blocked. I think he was nominated, his dad was nominated by Gordon Brown, and now he's nominated by Andy Burnham. This is not democracy. This is just get somebody else down here, jobs for the boys, connections, money, probably international influences as well. But what it's not about is what's best for Scotland. And again, Roddy, I'm going to thoroughly enjoy this because it's completely off topic in a way. But last weekend, Matt and I were away in the van and we had a brilliant time in Ayrshire. So I want to do a wee advert for how wonderful Girvan and surrounding areas are. There was a wee music festival, which was country and western type stuff in Girvan, down on the front. And I'd had a wee bit of a long lie, having had a late night the night before. And when I woke up, I wondered where I was because I could hear all this great music blasting. And at first I thought I was still dreaming. I had a look out and there was stage set up, disc jockey playing, and there was people doing line dancing in the slosh. And it was absolutely brilliant. There was folk in Stetsons and cowboy boots, and there was one man in particular. I wish I'd gone and spoken to him and asked his name because he was heavily into it and he was a really good mover. You should have been there, Phil. But these folk were having an absolute ball. Kids fleeing about with ice cream and 99s, and chip shop was open, the wee boats were out. It was just lovely. It was really, really good. So dodged about there for a while and then went a wee bit further south because I wanted to go for a paddle, which I achieved on the beach near Lendlefoot. But when we were there, two things happened that were a wee bit unusual. One was there was a busload of tourists had gone away and come back again because one of them had lost their phone. It was such a shame that the girl who'd lost her phone was American, but obviously we got to talking about you know what, and she was raving about the reception that the Tartan Army had and about all the different possibilities that there were for, twinning with Boston or other, parts of the parts of Boston, people making arrangements to come over to visit Scotland when they'd never really thought about it before. So pity she didn't find her phone, but a good conversation to be had about the massive reach, the positive reach of the Tartan Army and the very positive, warm reputation of the Scots. But then we got talking to a Scotsman who was walking his beautiful wee Jack Russell Terrier dog, Alfie. And Alfie's ball was in the water. It was getting taken further and further out, and Alfie was refusing to swim in to get it. But when I got speaking to Alfie's dad, he was retired, but had been, in essence, a pioneer and an entrepreneur and a real go-getter in his earlier years, because he'd left Scotland. He was an engineer, and he went and he worked for a while in New Zealand, in Australia, and then he and his wife, who was also Scottish, lived in various different parts of Africa, and then came back to Scotland. And I thought, how, and I'll get a shiver up the back of my neck thinking about this, how many people are there in Scotland who are as adventurous, capable, pioneering, and determined to see Scotland thrive? That one man was an example of that. He devoted his life to hard work, adventuring, but was able to do that based on a good, solid education and the ability to travel. But nowadays, what we've got is our people have got to go abroad for work because it's in the main not here. Phil being a case in point in terms of a lot of the stuff that he does or the folk that he knows. And there is within the Scots a spirit of adventure, but also a determination to see Scotland prosper, not just to go abroad to make your fortune, but to make sure that Scotland benefits from, all the different attributes that we've got. And that is not going to happen when we're part of the United Kingdom, because Westminster isn't designed to enable the satellite parts of the United Kingdom to prosper. And Anna Sarwar, to get back to the point, will be in Westminster for the sake of Anna Sarwar and Westminster and the constitutional and economic and international needs and aspirations of Westminster. He is not there to prioritise Scotland because he's a member of a unionist party. And the Labour Party in Scotland is the Unionist Labour Party. It's not the Scottish Labour Party. And I know there were recently discussions, I think possibly included Monica Lennon, if my memory serves me correctly, about the Labour in Scotland breaking away from the United Kingdom Labour Party. I wish they would, but I wish that there was a Scottish Labour Party that actually was devoted to Scotland's interests, because if it was, it would become a party that pursued independence. And we know that there are a huge number of Labour supporters who support independence. We know there are Tory supporters who support independence, and there are people from other so-called unionist parties that look not unfavourably upon independence. And these are all reasons why we need that united movement and that united drive that we speak about every single time that we do this show, or when out with the show, we're speaking to others involved in politics. And Phil said, you said, Roddy, about the Constitutional Convention. I don't know how many times the SNP have promised a convention. We do know that the description of the convention or its constitution or its purpose have altered periodically, because at times it's been suggested that it should be a convention on independence. At other times it was to be a convention on the right to decide. Well, the real way to go about this, if you want to have legitimacy within the world as well as within the movement, is to stop talking about it and to get the job done. It is almost a year since Keith Brown stood at the SNP conference and said, the work has already started. It started today. Oh, well, it's starting tomorrow. It has not seen the light of day. And in the meantime, you've got Gordon McIntyre Kemp and Believe in Scotland fundraising and organising to employ a number of people to look at some sort of united drive towards independence, while Yes United are delivering policies and creating events which are actually about bringing people together, not about bums on seats for anointed individuals, or, in the case of a couple of recent by-elections for Westminster here in Scotland, people that you've either not heard of before or of questionable pedigrees, but go out there and make constant videos about Scotland deserves the right to choose, Scotland deserves independence, and they're not doing a damn thing to make it come about. There's nothing constructive in those campaigns. So I would really hope that the people in the SNP and the people in the movement look at Sarwar's elevation and take that for what it is, It's a slap in the face to the Scottish electorate. He didn't win his seat first past the post. He got in again as a list MSP. He's walking away down to London, which is his primary focus. And here we have Monica Lennon about to be parachuted in when she didn't win her seat, and she's going in there on the list as well. Yeah. These people are not successes, no matter how nice you might think they are. And it's cheek. And it's what the Scottish people could well do without.
Yeah, Sarwar didn't even get 5,000 votes. Unfortunately, I just tell you, part of Eva's story there, she was talking about she's a long life because she's a late night. She meant she was fished. That's what she meant, but she didn't say it. She called it a late night. Am I right? I'm right. I know I'm right. I'll get into trouble for this later, but I don't care. And the Sarwar, Phil, the hypocrisy, he get 5,000 votes in his seat, gets in the list, he's done nothing, he's achieved nothing, except, he's there as a doorstop for the union, and he's now a government minister. I believe it's business, they're giving him business. He's a dentist, he's getting business. The guy whose father's company won't pay a living wage, won't allow a union, he's a labour man, but they don't allow a union in his dad's place of work. He's going to get a business job in England for London. Disgusting. Nauseating.
Yeah, but it's just more of the same. But as a wee adjunct to Eva's Country and Western story, there's a grand old Opry in not too far from Ibrox Road. You'll probably know where it is. And it's cowboys, quick draw and all that kind of stuff. And I was on a train going into town, and there was this old guy. Poor guy. He was wearing a full cowboy outfit, right? He must have been about 60, 70 or something like that. And he was getting absolute pelters on the train fare, right? Oh, Jesus. It was cringing. And I was like, just as he was getting off, I said to the boy, I bet you wish the guns were real, mate. Because he was mortified. But so that great fun. We're great fun. We take the piss, but we have a laugh. So I totally get it.
The cowboy was probably a member of the Labour Party.
Well, there you go. Well, on exactly that. Who is, read my lips, John Swinney, there will be no austerity under a Labour government and a Sarwar. Apart from lying about the austerity, we continue to face.
Read my lips. No austerity under Labour.
There you go. Very plug for this.
Exactly. This is the guy. He's also, as you said, criticised the House of Lords, saying it should be abolished. Liar, liar, pants on fire, Mr. Sarwar, and he is a failure. He's a failure, but his appointment to the House of Lords marks. It's a significant shift here when you think about it. He's come out with the bullshit and toadied up with the party line in Scotland, lying to the people of Scotland. Now he's gone down to lie to the people of Britain on a bigger stage, and it's all about him. And bear in mind, he led the Scottish Labour Party to its worst ever Holyrood election result. He's been made a peer and appointed as business minister. You're right. It's a new department that's been created called the Department for Business Innovation, Science and Trade. They do this all the time.
In my opinion, sorry to interrupt you, Phil. It's his reward. It's his reward for going against Starmer and starting the ball in motion, or helping the ball roll down the hill to let Burnham in. As Eva said earlier, this has been getting planned for a while, and this is his reward. This is how these bastards work, ladies and gentlemen.
It's the game, and he's joining this upper chamber after he previously called for the abolition of it. So his new role is expected to bring him closer to Scottish businesses in the UK. Aye, my arse. You and your mates, more like. And he'll be one of the first to discuss and promote Scotland's interest on a national level. My arse. You might discuss it, but you'll do nothing for us because you never did anything when you were in office. But well, who is he? More on where he came from. His father, Chowdhury Mohammed Sarwar, is a Pakistani British politician who served as the governor of the Punjab for 2 consecutive terms, right? He was also a member of Parliament in the UK for over a decade, representing Glasgow Central. And prior to that, his family had built a chain of cash and carry stores that was very, very successful. Anis, therefore, attended a private school in Glasgow. I think you know it, Roddy.
Hutchison's.
Yeah. And now is also abandoning Glasgow. So Anis, there's consistency here. His dad abandoned Glasgow and Scotland. He's abandoned Glasgow and Scotland, and he's confirmed he's stepping down. And he's going to leave and the Scottish panel and his leadership role, okay? And he'll be granted this period so we can take up, right? Now, he's led the Labour Party since 2021, and he would work with his successor to serve the people in Scotland. No, you won't. No, you won't. You're lying again, Anis. He said he was delighted to join the UK government and been an honour to serve the people in Glasgow. I've been motivated by public service. Right. I mean, Monica Lennon, as Eva said, is next in line because she was on the list. And if she knocks it back, the funny thing is, if she knocks it back, it's a guy, Adams, comes in. Is it James Adams? I think it is. He's the one after Monica, if she knocks it back, which means there'll be 2 James Adams in Holyrood. But it doesn't matter. It's a farce, an absolute farce. This, again, said, this leaves Dame Jackie Baillie, another wee bauble from the Crown for your service, you doff capper Jackie Baillie. She'll become the acting leader of the Scottish Labour with Sarwar's exit. This is more of the same, more of looking after each other. You scratch mine, I'll scratch your back. These are snouts in the trough, people who are out for their own benefit, and they have done nothing to further or benefit the cause for the rise of the people of Scotland. Now, I would see if I honestly thought that Scotland would be better within the Union. I would have no problem in voting for it. I'd still feel inclined to get independence because I just, from my pride point of view, but for the benefit of the people of Scotland, if they were actually doing something about it and they could put up a case for why we should vote Labour or Tory or Reform. I can't believe people are going to vote for Reform. The guy that took us out of the UK, that gave us Brexit, and the guy that's funded the hedge funds, the guy that's going to destroy your NHS and destroy your education and take what little you've got. I mean, wake up, folk, because he doesn't like boat people. And his kids are sitting out. It's the whole thing absolutely stinks. It's based around misinformation, and I think I've still got it on my on one of my profiles. If you're voting for corrupt politicians, you're not a victim. As Orwell says, you're an accomplice. So hell mend you.
No. I just say not everyone's pleased. Even Labour people are complaining about Anis. And here's just read you a wee thing later. This came and you see it hit out at Sarwar. It was going to the Parliament. Laura Harper, who sits in the Scottish Executive, the governing body of the Scottish Labour Party, which is actually the British Labour Party, they even lie about their name, told the National that the decision was shameful, particularly given the ongoing internal review on the recent Scottish elections, which saw the party achieve its worst ever result. Anis Sarwar has consistently failed Scottish Labour and its members, she said. And she's a member of the Labour Party, Eva. Even his own people think he's taking the piss here with taking this little bauble.
They're needing to get a grip of themselves. I mean, the Labour Party's been going to abolish the House of Lords for 100 years.
More than that.
And instead of doing that, they've just continued to pack it full whenever they've had the opportunity. So for Jackie Baillie to say Anis Sarwar doesn't believe in the House of Lords and he thinks it should be abolished, she missed a wee bit at the end of that sentence, because what she meant to say was after he's not sitting there anymore. This is just how pathetic it is. I mean, look at the people that you've got there.
Yeah. George
Filks. Need I say any more?
Lady Moon.
And then there's obviously been, well, I can't resist the opportunity for a wee bit of ribbon for my old friend. Is Pete Wishart annoyed that Anis Sarwar is there, or is he jealous?
Jealous. So is to be, what do you call him, Bab Blackford?
Ian Blackford. Are they annoyed or are they jealous?
Sturgeon.
Oh, don't go there.
Well, we are going there in a minute.
No, I think it's absolutely tragic when you look at elevation to the Lords and you look at the calibre of the people that are in Burnham's cabinet and you think the people of Scotland should be able to run rings round them, get some sort of vote, again following Angus Brendan McNeill's line, and vote for independence and leave them standing. Take care of our own resources, use our own resources for the good of the people of Scotland and get on with it. Otherwise, we're going to continue to go down and it's not going to be pretty. The other thing, actually, Roddy, I think you touched on this earlier on. one of the first moves that Andy Burnham made, and he was going to be a new broom and a clean sweep and in touch with the people, as is evidenced by his ability to sing, dance, operate a disc jockey's turntable, and he knows the price of a pint. What he did was he authorised the US forces to use UK bases to bomb Iran. Now, does that not just speak for itself?
Well, yeah, he also said, Eva, before he said, we made a mistake in supporting the Israel in the Gaza genocide. And then this is part of you can't separate it. This is part of the Gaza genocide bombing Iran. And so the hypocrisy, and it's the one thing that really annoys me about politics globally, but that's the hypocrisy. We're now a target.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course we are. He's done that. He's done it on purpose, and we're all at risk of carrying the can for that.
Yeah.
There are so many arguments in favour of Scottish independence. I get Phil's point about if we were going to be better off economically remaining part of the UK, fair enough. But the priorities of Westminster are not in the main the priorities of the people of Scotland. The people of Scotland are generally not warmongers. Traditionally and historically, it was the people of Scotland that were on the front line, proportionately far more than elsewhere, especially evidenced by statistics from the First World War, of which we all had ancestors who fought there. So I go back to Scotland as a nation, and nations govern themselves. But we want to be a peaceable, peace-loving, independent nation because we are a sovereign people. And the quicker that we get down that route properly, using every idea, every notion, every approach that we can have, whether it's internationally, domestically, and by the ballot box, then the better, because there are lots of organisations and lots of people that have good ideas. It's a question of them coming together, because not one individual has all the answers, but collectively, we don't just have the answers, we've got the power and the force, the intelligence and the ability to deliver it. And that's what needs to be harnessed.
Yeah, absolutely. The clock's beating us a wee bit. We're getting there. But I know, Phil, you're wanting to speak on this now while we were having our wee summer holiday, which has been cut short. David Davis made a bit of an entry in the House of Lords, the House of Commons, where he said what a lot of us are saying out loud and thinking is, she must have known what was going on. And if he said it outside of Parliament, she said she would sue. Well, others have said it. Will she sue? And what did you make of David Davis saying this? Oh, Phil. You're muted, Phil.
Yeah, sorry, I was looking at a couple of articles, because I've read a few articles on this, and the one I found that was most informative was the Telegraph. So I'll go through what it said, but it's basically, I'm paraphrasing the Telegraph when speaking this, because I felt this was a very well crafted article by Simon Johnson, the Telegraph's Scottish political editor. Would I normally go to him? Well, I would go to him if I wanted to know what the establishment wanted to say. And so this is very much, he's citing the establishment position. So what he wants to do is not destroy the SNP, but damage it so it's less effective, because that's what the establishment want. Because they have the SNP exactly where they want them. They have independence currently exactly where it wants. So the headline was, "Lying Sturgeon destroyed salmon to save her own skin," said David Davis. Now this is the former SNP leader, Nicola, accuses the Tory grandee of telling lies, like a coward behind the legal privilege of Westminster. This is and that's rich coming from her. That is so rich coming from anybody that knows anything that's happened recently with the alphabetes, etc. She's an absolute con artist. So she tried to destroy Alex Salmond's reputation to prevent him from uncovering her husband's embezzlement. Well, husband's embezzlement of SNP funds, MPs have been told. Now, speaking in the House of Commons, Sir David Davis says, "Miss Sturgeon, you full well that Peter Murrell had been stealing money from the party and using it to fund luxury purchases." So, you know what you're on. You know you're both on a good whack. You live in the same house. And all these really expensive items keep turning up, and Jaguars in the driveway, and motorhomes in your mother-in-law's driveway. But the what Davis went on to say was her most evil act was stitching up Alex to hide the truth. Now that for me is telling. Last month, Murrell was sentenced to a 5-year prison stint after he admitted embezzling 400 grand from the SNP. This is from 2010 to 22, which included 124 grand for the motorhome, right? And spending it on a whole bunch of stuff. He also went on to say this critically. Sir David told MPs on Thursday that Miss Sturgeon and her fellow conspirators have moved against Salmond when he considered joining the SNP's ruling National Executive Committee, fearing he would reveal Murrell's crimes. So what did he actually say? Well, he went on in great detail. Unfortunately, it was cut from 10 minutes. This has happened before. I've crafted a speech, or someone's crafted a speech in tandem with me for 10 minutes, and you set it all up, and you're quite happy with the content, and then at the last minute, the speaker says, right, you've only got 4 minutes, we're running out of time. You think, oh, you've got ad hoc cut it. And that's what he had to do here. So he had a lot more to say. So he said Salmond had been a numerate man who could not be silenced, and the risk he had posed to them by uncovering the embezzlement was clear. He said, and this is again verbatim quotes when they're cited, there was a malicious and concerted attempt to remove him from public life with sexual misconduct allegations. He was not found. He was found not guilty or not proven on one. So he was not found guilty on any of this. So he faced multiple allegations in 2018, but was acquitted of all charges in 2020. Pasted all over the media, but none of that Salmond's defence was posted. See when people knew who these people were and what their accusations were. It will enrage you when it comes out, as it must. It will enrage you
eventually.
Now, yeah, and Sir David alleged it now appears clear that these actions to destroy a man's reputation and life are motivated by a desire to hide their own crimes, and that I believe was part of it, but I also believe MI5. 77th Brigade have got SNP exactly where they want them, because as I keep saying, well, the Brits are still good at some things, and we've got some very, very good people who know these games and play these games ruthless. We'll change dictators, or we'll change leaders, democratically elected leaders all over the world. We'll carry out all sorts of horrible things just to make sure that the people who really control us get what they want. But basically, in response, Sturgeon has said he's an old boys club boy. So that's that old card he's playing again. He was telling more lies about me and of hiding like a coward behind the legal privileges of Westminster. Now, what does that mean? Well, MPs are protected in the Commons by absolute privilege, which means they cannot be sued for defamation for statements they make there, okay? And it was also alleged that Murrell had insisted that some of the items he purchased be removed from the charge sheet, including female underwear, because they incriminated Miss Sturgeon. He said that I don't know, I was going to say Murrell would have no use for them, but maybe I'm wrong there. It says the decision by Scotland's Crown Office Prosecution Service to agree this as part of a deal for him to plead guilty had been, in his words, a clear conflict of interest. So he's saying that there's a conflict of interest and that the Scotland's Crown Office removed evidence that would that doesn't sound right to me. The Lord Advocate, Scotland's Chief Prosecutor, is also the Scottish Government's most senior legal advisor. However, Ruth Charteris KC, who was recently appointed to the role, and her predecessor Dorothy Bain KC, have said they recused themselves from all decisions about the case. Right, anyway, we could go on. But the bottom line is here, what he said is, she is lying.
Yep. I would just like to say, and I know for a fact, David Davis mentioned it in the House of Commons, and Alec, I heard it from his own lips as well. He said to who he thought was his pal, he was her mentor. This was his good buddy. He said to her, the first thing you're going to have to do as leader of the party and First Minister, the hardest thing you'll ever have to do, you need to sack your husband and replace him with someone else. I heard that.
Exactly. And Roddy, why did they think they would get away with this? This is the last point
I've mentioned this before in the podcast, and I said that's what I think triggered it. I didn't think the other connections. But I thought that's what triggered it when she said, you've got to sack your husband.
Yeah, and the other thing is the British state have already captured her. Remember what they did to the IRA? If the British state can infiltrate the IRA, how easy to infiltrate the woke SNP? So they've already captured her over her own personal situation in her marriage. Then there's the deal that we understand was done that didn't get her struck off by the Law Society when she left the legal profession. Then the affairs with others. And that's just what we're being told. Yes, by others. Yeah, she will do what she's told, as they have too much leverage on her. And the alphabet women and other bad actors, both within the SNP and without, for example, Scottish mainstream media, the stitch up to Alex Salmond in an attempt to destroy him politically with trumped up charges, the prosecution for jigsaw identification of Craig Murray, who was jailed for absolute ridiculous when Danny Garvey, or whatever her name is, actually named someone, which is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous, rightly or wrongly. And when you're controlled by the British state, when you become a useful asset, as Nicola and her cabinet have, then they will protect their asset to a certain degree. Why is she and her cabal an asset? It's simple. We know this because they've not moved one step forward towards independence since Nicola was handed the golden keys to an independent Scotland by Alex after the independence referendum in 2014 and promptly sold them and the Scottish people down the river.
When you ask why, it's easy. Drill, baby, drill. That's why they need the oil. We've run out of time. Two things I'd like to go, Eva. I've got to get you to comment to you now. This is one that I sent you. I had to get confirmation that it was true. And this is, it's like one of the many reasons we want to get out of independence. But this, Eva, was advice from the Lord Mayor of London. If a woman was cornered by a man and thought she was about to be sexually assaulted or raped, this is what they suggested. We'll just get this up here. Here we go. No, that's not what he suggested. Words absolutely. Talk about the game if you think you're about to be raped. Ask if they watched the game on Saturday. Eva, I had to phone you and say, is this true or is this a spoof?
It appears to be true. You'll see the wee footnote at the bottom that says only intervene if you feel safe, which is an acknowledgement that you should not feel safe if there is something that looks like it's a hate crime or you know, potential sexual abuse or whatever it is. I mean, that is just so out of touch and off the wall that you are looking at it twice thinking, did that really happen? But it did, because there's innumerable comments from, you know, long established, highly respected organisations, especially obviously women's organisations, saying how wrong-minded that advice is. So, you know, the next time that I'm on a train and somebody's behaving inappropriately, the last thing I'm going to do is ask them if they were at the game at the weekend. It's absolutely, utterly, I mean, it's beyond belief, except that it's more of the same in terms of the woke agenda and be kind, rather than accepting that, you know, women particularly are very unsafe in a lot of different environments because of the behaviour of men.
Of course, and if it went to court, the defence, you were talking, you must have liked it because you were talking about the game with them. So you encouraged it by having conversation with them.
Yeah, but it's just a continuation of the nonsense that we've had. I mean, when Phil was referring to Nicola Sturgeon, who can ever forget the interview when she was asked to correctly sex the notorious rapist, whom I'm not going to name, but you all know that I'm talking about Pink Leggings Man. That's how farcical it got. And it's actually not improved much, even although for Women Scotland, Murray Blackburn Mackenzie, etc., worked so hard, including for Women Scotland, to win their Supreme Court victory. You've still got people saying that for Women Scotland, Murray Blackburn Mackenzie, Women Won't Wheeze, J.K. Rowling are anti-trans because they equate that with being pro-women, when all that any of us are saying is you can't change your sex and single-sex services and spaces are essential, full stop.
Yeah. And the other one, of course, I'd like to mention is, you know, we hear so much, Eva, about our Scotland's so bad, Scotland's shit, you know, this ferries. We don't talk about aircraft carriers or Type 45 frigates, etc. But here's something, ladies and gentlemen, that I didn't know that came across. Scotland spends 4 times more than on affordable housing than England. We do get some things right and some things better. And there's a lot of these things that we should know and keep in our back pocket, Eva, to use against the unionists when they're slagging us off?
Well, we're doing better, but we could do better yet were we in charge of our own economy. And again, I repeat, I said earlier about the best people in the movement that need to be marshalled. John Swinney could turn the housing situation in Scotland around practically overnight if he spoke to Alec Neil and encouraged the implementation of the advice and the policy that Alec drafted a couple of years ago now. But interestingly, when you mention housing, Andy Burnham's housing minister or member of cabinet is the return of Angela Rayner. Angela Rayner, who had to jacket in September 2025, a few short months ago, only as the result of her own lack of candour relative to paying her tax debt for her additional home. And while she's been out of the cabinet, she's made a couple of $100,000, including an advance relative to her novel or her life story or whatever it is that she's writing. But she got severance pay coming out of the cabinet of $17,000, which she's refusing to return. But not only is she refusing to return it now that she's back in the cabinet again, she previously had the brass neck to criticise Tories who'd had severance payments. So again, the working class can kiss my you-know-what.
Yeah, I believe she's also very friendly with Larry Flink of BlackRock. She's seen him or close buddies.
See, Roddy, on that, see that this wokeism will never stop me from if I saw that happen on a train where a woman was being clearly pestered by a man, and I've seen plenty of clips of others stepping in, it would not stop me. If this wokeism would never stop me from stepping in and saying and do something, because we know that it's the physical difference between men and women, and it's men's proclivity to violence that causes a lot of these problems. And also, you as a human being, all of us should speak up and say something. That's what we should be doing. But that's such a stupid thing to say. Scary.
I just want to actually say we're running on here. I just want to finish off with one slightly light-hearted. I'm attacked quite a lot by Rangers supporting unionists who tell me I must be a Tim. That we should be Barhead Boy with an H because no self-respecting Rangers man would not be a Brit. You've got to be a Brit. You've got to support the Rangers, and I can't support the Rangers. I just want you to know, folks, all you Huns out there, your new British Prime Minister loves a Celtic. How's that going to play with you? Your British Prime Minister loves a Celtic. Get it up, you lads. Get it up, you. Until we see you again, I don't know, whenever these people do something that makes us want to come out. Well, we might continue our summer holiday, who knows? But until we see you again, may you and yours, please, please, please take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.